Hi folks, and welcome to the handover video for the XT10E. This video is an important one to watch because it covers all the things not covered in the setup and pack up videos. There's a lot to know about your new caravan, so come with me and I'll show you all the features and the troubleshooting items that you'll need to know and keep as a video reference. Before you pick up your new caravan, there's some things you need to do to prepare your vehicle for picking it up. First of all, you need to have the correct wiring on your vehicle. The XT10E uses a 12-pin trailer plug. Now the reason we do this is the 7 pins along there, they're your normal trailer lights and your working pin for your electric brakes. But there are also 5 other pins above it, rather large ones. In this trailer, we utilise the number 12 pin as the trigger wire for the DC to DC unit. That does a couple of things. One, it makes the DC to DC switch across to take power from both the Anderson plug that connects to your vehicle and the solar at the same time. It also triggers that DC to DC unit to do its magic to make vehicles with a smart alternator supply enough voltage to fully charge the batteries in the trailer. So that's important. Make sure you ask your salesperson for a schematic diagram on how to wire up both the 12 pin and the Anderson plug. The Anderson plug itself is what carries the higher current to the batteries. It's connected to the DC to DC unit and straight through to the batteries to charge them while you're driving. You can't use this into a dual battery system on your vehicle, which is already being fed by a DC to DC unit. Your Anderson plug connection on your vehicle needs to go from the plug at the back of your vehicle all the way to the start battery. Ideally, you'll have a relay in place so it only supplies power while the car is running, and you will absolutely need to put a fuse in it, which should be a 50 amp value fuse. Also, before you come to pick up your new trailer, you need to make sure your tow ball tongue does not have a ball or any kind of fitting in it. You want this part of your tow bar to be free, just the hole there. When you get to the branch, they will install the correct pin to suit the coupling on your trailer. In this case, it's a DO35, one of the best hitches I've ever used. It's very, very strong and it's very easy to use. Simply have your trailer raised on the jockey wheel to a point where you can back the pin underneath the coupling, and it's simply a matter of just lowering the jockey wheel until the coupling sits on the ball fitting on the pin, and then you lock it. I'll demonstrate that for you now. Now that we've lowered the coupling down onto the pin, to lock the coupling in place, we simply press this red button. The guillotine slides across, locks into the groove on the pin. That coupling is now secure, and we have this plastic cover to go over the top of it. I find the easiest way is to line up the front, get that on, and then tap the back, and it's now on secure. This plastic cap is also a second safety measure. It will not go on unless that coupling is locked. So if you can't get this on, there is a problem with the locking mechanism of the coupling. And remember to use a dry lubricant regularly on the pin so you make sure everything moves freely, doesn't wear and bind up. Also, there is a rubber O-ring on the pin, and that should always be kept in good condition. If it's broken or damaged, have it replaced. You can get the part from Cruise Master. When connecting up the safety chains from your trailer to your vehicle, you need to, one, cross the chain. So the chain from this side comes across under the hitch and connects on the opposite side of the tow bar. So the chains cross. Ideally too, you need to shorten these to a length to try and prevent the drawbar hitting the ground in the event the trailer becomes unhitched. Not always quite possible depending on the hitch length. Not something we can do in this particular setup, no matter how much we tighten them up. And when you do shorten them, you want to make sure that the trailer has complete articulation and the chains don't come tight. Then, once you've got all that connected up, you have a breakaway lanyard. Now this lanyard is connected to a switch here on the drawbar. And what it does is, in the event the trailer becomes detached from the vehicle, this lanyard will pull a pin out of the breakaway switch box, and two contacts will come together and apply the brakes in the trailer to stop it in an emergency. The brakes are connected through this switch direct to the house batteries. So it's important to have a maintenance charge to those batteries while you're traveling, so the batteries are always in peak condition and can hold that trailer still for a minimum of 15 minutes if it becomes detached. The lanyard itself needs to be connected to a solid piece of the vehicle. You can't connect it to the shackles for the chains. It needs to connect to a solid part of the vehicle. In case these shackles come adrift, undo themselves, this will still be connected. You can change this fitting, the shackle, to a carabiner clip or something that suits your vehicle, but make sure you connect it to a solid part. Normally what I'll do is use a lanyard that goes around my entire rear bumper on this and connect to this. That way I know even if my whole hitch fell out, this is still connected and will work in the event of an emergency. Now I've got all my wiring connected, the Anderson plug and the 12-pin plug into the 12-pin socket. All my cabling is laid out in a way where it can't drag on the ground, but if there's a chance that it could flip over, drag on the ground, use some cable ties or something to secure it. Make sure everything can still articulate, but at all costs avoid those cables dragging on the ground because they get ruined. Now I can raise my jockey wheel by simply winding it up and lift it out of the way by pulling the bar out and locking it in that way and putting my handle up over there so it's not sitting below the jockey wheel. When you raise or lower the jockey wheel and you pivot it up in this position, always make sure that the pins on the end of this handle come through and you can see them on the other side of the plate and they're secure, particularly when you're putting the jockey wheel down to raise your drawbar. Now, disconnect the handbrake, which is an important thing. Don't drive off with your handbrake on because you'll very quickly ruin brake pads and possibly break some of the components in the brakes. When unhitching your trailer, follow these steps. Pull up, get your trailer as level as you can. So you want your trailer sitting flat on the ground. If there's a slope in the ground and one side's lower than the other, use a step ramp to raise it up rather than using the stabilizer legs to lift it and get it in position. Once there, pull on the handbrake firmly, then lower your jockey wheel. It's important, if there's any slope at all, use wheel chocks. I advise using wheel chocks at all times to make sure your trailer can't move if the handbrake isn't on properly or needs adjustment or just doesn't work all that well. Once the jockey wheel's down, we can take a little bit of weight off the drawbar and disconnect all our wiring. Also, remember to disconnect your breakaway. If by accident you haven't disconnected it and you pull the pin out of the switch, make sure you put it back in straight away. The wedge will sit flat, so the wedge at the front of the pin, flat, slide it into the box and that'll separate the pins. Remove our trailer plug, and the last thing we do is disconnect the chains. What we can do now, pull that off, and to release the DA35 coupling, we push the red button down and slide the guillotine lock back. When that's locked back, that'll release the pin and raise it up. Now that's released, we can disconnect the chains. The chains are always last in case the worst happens and your trailer tries to roll away, the chains will secure it and stop it from moving very far. Now, disconnect the chains and then we're ready to set up the rest of the caravan. Up front here, we have our gas bottle storage and our jerry can / diesel heater tank storage on this side. Keep in mind, these two compartments here aren't completely dry or dust proof. The gas bottle storage unit has large holes in the bottom to vent and allow any gas that leaks to escape through the bottom of the compartment. On this side, there is a penetration there for the fuel line for the diesel heater tank. Whatever you do, don't store anything in here you want to either keep dry or dust free. It simply won't happen. And if you store jerry cans in this side, make sure they're packed in a way where they can't move and damage the tank for the diesel heater. So think about how you store things and do it correctly. Also in here is what we call the pigtail, which runs from the regulator to the gas bottle. This one currently has a standard fitting you're all familiar with. It's a thread that runs inside the valve on the bottle. With gas regulation changes, gas bottles are changing to a different valve. If your trailer turns up with a different fitting to this, which actually screws around the outside of the gas bottle valve, you need to make sure you get the right gas bottle to fit your caravan. You'll see on this particular gas bottle, there is an internal thread on the valve and an external one. If you're unsure, look up the masterclass for the new gas valves on gas bottles. Behind this hatch here, what we've got is everything you need to know about your fresh water. The cap here on the left is actually the filler cap for your water tank. So you unscrew this and fill your water through there. Always try and use a food grade hose and preferably a filter when you're filling up from any water source. Beside that, we have our mains water connection. Now, this connection runs straight into the water system inside the caravan. This particular style of water connections don't have a pressure reducing system in it. So areas with high water pressure, what you want to do is get a pressure reducer from Bunnings or somewhere like that and put that in line with your water hose before you connect to here, because with high pressure water areas, you don't want to risk blowing lines inside your caravan. So it's always a good safety measure to have that on your hose fitting before it connects to here. The Aussie Traveller door on your new XT10E isn't quite as simple as you would think a door is. This door operates as your security and your enclosure, and there is also a screen door. But the most important thing is understanding how to lock it. You need to lock it with a key, but before you do, you need to take the handle and turn it in the opposite way to locking it. What that does is it slides out two security bolts, one there, one up top. Then you can pop your key into the door and lock it. It's now locked. To unlock it, simply the opposite and turn the handle and away you go. Now, just to show you how that works, there's our bolts, top and bottom, which come out into their striker plates, top and bottom. Makes it a lot more secure. Now, to separate these two door skins to use the screen door, in the center between the chrome lock here and the handle there is a little black lever. Lift that lever and the two will separate. So now you've got your screen door, and this door can go back and use the door latch here, pop that in, and that'll hold this door open. Again, to lock the screen door, same thing, turn the handle the opposite way, then lock it with the key. And it's also important to remember, when locking it with the internal chrome latch, you need to do the same thing there before you turn it and lock it and secure the door. Now that's secured. When you're inside, remember to open the door, you lift the handle up, not the natural thing to turn it down. You lift it up. Super important, and don't ever forget this, when you want to put the two doors back together, they're connected by two pins, top and bottom, which slot into a hole here and down here. And it's held in by a little guillotine latch, which locks into a groove on the pin. When you put them together, do it firmly. Make sure they're locked in together and can't separate. If the outer door separates from the screen door while you're traveling, it can open and get damaged. So always make sure they're together properly, then close your door and lock it as I showed you before. When you pick up your XT10E, there's going to be a multitude of additional items in the storage area when you pick it up. I'm just going to run through the items you need to expect when you do pick up your new caravan. First of all is the pin for your DO35 hitch. The staff at your branch will fit this for you when you arrive. Just be sure to turn up with no ball fitting or anything in your toe ball tongue. Along with that is a C-spanner. This is used to secure and stop the DO35 hitch pin from spinning when you do it up. So those two items with the plastic cap will be in there waiting for you when you arrive. Next is what we call the green swizzle stick. This is the tool you use to adjust the awning limits on the electric awning. By turning the potentiometers in this, you can adjust how far the awning extends and how far it retracts. Use that in conjunction with the manual for the awning. Make sure you read the instructions very carefully before you do it, because you can actually do damage to your awning if you get it incorrect. There'll be a bunch of spare keys plus a full set of keys here. The number of keys is quite high, so you won't run short on spares, so there'll be plenty of them for you. In this bag here, what we have is 2 bearing seals, 2 bearing crown nuts, some spare wheel studs in 14mm, wheel nuts and split pins. So all you need to complete a bearing service is a set of bearings, and it's always a good idea to have a spare set with you when you travel, just in case the worst happens. Bearing seals you can normally get from your bearing shop, but at times, because they're quite a large seal, can be difficult to find. So we provide those as a spare. And something you must know is this castle nut or crown nut that goes on the axle when all the hub comes together is not something that you're going to buy over the counter anywhere. So you'll get these from MDC. Because we use a fairly unique parallel bearing setup with a large stub axle, and when you look at the size of that hole, it gives you an idea of just how big the axle is. It's very strong, but it is fairly unique to MDC. So if you damage one of these or lose these, you need to contact MDC for replacements. Next, we have the pegs for your awning feet. So if you're pegging your awning down rather than running it back to the body of the caravan, these are what you use to peg them down, and there's a hole there if you want to secure an additional guy rope to stop it from trying to lift. You'll also get a wheel brace. Now, if you're a good customer and you've been watching the masterclasses, this is good to get you home. You need to check the wheel nuts on your new trailer at 50, 100, 250 and 500 kilometers on your way home when it's new. Now, this is good enough to check them on the way home, but you should buy yourself a torque wrench, an extension bar on that torque wrench, because you want it to get out past the tire so you can tighten the wheel nuts, and the correct 21mm socket on it. And the torque settings on a new MDC Caravan will be 140 Newton meters for the wheel studs. 140 Newton meters is the highest value allowable due to them being alloy rims. Alcoa recommend 140 Newton meters as a maximum for any rim made with their materials. Next, we have the remote control for the roof raising mechanism. It's It's a press and hold system to raise and to lower it, not a single press momentary type switch. Comes with a battery. The battery is quite unique, so if you need to get a spare, check the battery and get it at the appropriate electronics shop. In this white box here, what we have is the remote control for the Truma air conditioner. Now, you may at times have to pair the remote control with the air conditioner. Inside the satchel, there is all the manuals for the appliances in your caravan. So check the Truma manual for the aircon on how to pair that if it hasn't already been paired. Inside here is the instruction booklet and remote control for the stereo in the caravan. So look for that. There'll be a set of 4 straps. These are an adjustable strap and they are for securing your fridge in the fridge slide. So make sure you secure it front and back. I tend to try and secure the handles towards the front to the back of the slide and from the back of the fridge to the front of the slide to stop it from moving forwards and backwards. In some fridges, depending on the type of tray that they fit in the caravan, you may want to add some rubber feet to the bottom of your fridge so it can't move around. Here in front of me is the owner booklet for the Aussie Traveller door, and you'll find some small metal pieces, these, which are actually spacers for the striker plates on the door. If at some point in the future you need to adjust the striker plate for the main lock or the bolts top and bottom, these are the ones you use for it. Here is the manual winder for your electric awning. So this hex drive fits into a slot at the back of the awning towards the back of the caravan and allows you to wind the awning in and out if in the case of a power loss. You'll also find one of these. This is the handle for the jack. The jack is stored on the other side of the caravan. So yes, your caravan will come with the applicable jack to raise it up if you need to change a tyre. And of course, the speed brace for the stabiliser legs. That's what you can use to wind them up and down. A good alternative is an electric drill, not a rattle gun, but an electric drill with a 19mm socket, and you'll make that job a lot quicker. In this satchel, you'll find a few extra little spare parts, all the manuals for your appliances, and also a laminated diagram for the awning poles and anti-flap kit, and which is quite handy. All your Truma manuals, everything, have a read through them because the information in here isn't necessarily contained in the MDC owner manual, and be sure to download and print off a copy or save to files on your device a copy of the MDC owner manual for your caravan. Last but not least will be your TV. It'll still be stored in a box, so you can choose whether you want to mount it inside your caravan or not. It's an LED TV and DVD combo, so it'll play DVDs and free-to-air television. Antennas aren't standard on the MDC range of caravans, so if you want to watch free-to-air, you need to consider at time of purchase getting a Winegard sensor antenna installed on the caravan. Then you can watch free-to-air or you can play DVDs. It's not a smart TV, so you may not necessarily be able to cast to it from your device. So there are all the items that will be in there. So have your person doing the handover with you go through those and check that they're all there and you know what they're for. In your new caravan, looking after the windows and the shades is an important thing. Now, in operating the windows, each of the latches has a little grey button in the centre. To unlatch, you must push the grey button in before you turn the handle. The little struts on your windows are incremental Each time you hear a click, that's the next increment in holding the window open. That's at the top, and to close it, all the way up and lower it back down. And to lock it, simply pull it in and turn the handle back. There's two locking positions on these windows. When you look at the locking plates around the window, there's two flat tabs. If you pull it in all the way to the nearest tab to the inside, that's locking the window sealed and closed. If you move the lock to in between those two tabs, it leaves a slight window gap so you can get some breeze through, but your window is still secured as locked. Something very important when using the screens and block-out blinds on your windows is taking extra care with them. They are probably the most vulnerable part of any caravan. So when you raise them or lower them, do so with two hands and do it carefully, particularly when you're retracting them. The barrel is spring loaded and will need maintenance after a period of time to retension the spring loading in them, which can be done at the end. Consult the manual for these. They're a Euro Vision window, so there are YouTube videos on how to make those adjustments. If you're not sure, get a reputable caravan repairer to do so. So always be careful with them. The bottom is the block out screen. The top is the fly mesh. It's a fairly fine mesh, so it should keep pretty much all the bugs out. And you can bring these together and the handles will lock in place. So once they're locked together, it's a one-piece item. To separate them, just pull the clips up and you can separate them. Something very important is when you do have the window open and you want to use these, only ever use the screen. You don't want to be putting up the block out shutter with the window open, because what can happen is if you get a breeze and you get a change in air pressure, it can actually suck the fabric out of the rails on the edge and damage the unit itself. So remember, never have your block out screen up when the window is open. Other than that, with your windows, don't ever use chemicals to clean them. Just wipe them down with water and a soft cloth or chamois, because you don't want to scratch the acrylic. So always remember, don't use any harsh cleaning chemicals on your window, because you can actually dull and damage it over time. One of the parts of caravan ownership that often confuse people is the electrical systems. So what I'm going to do is explain the 12-volt electrical system and the various components contained underneath the seat in the dinette, which you need to know in case you have one of the systems go down while you're out camping. So I'll point out what each item is and its function, so you have an understanding of what you need to know when you're out there camping. Underneath the dinette seat, you have the majority of the electrical systems, starting with the two AGM deep cycle batteries. So they're an AGM type, deep cycle, and secured there. The other major components are the projector IntelliCharge charger. This is a 35 amp 7-stage charger, which has a number of settings and is a really good method of maintaining these batteries. You can actually leave your caravan plugged into mains power, running this charger to constantly maintain the batteries. It'll do a fantastic job. Always ensure that the charger is set to AGM batteries. So always keep an eye on that. Make sure it is. It'll run through the various stages. If you do ever have a fault, check with the projector manual the fault code. You can also run this as a power supply, so it's quite a versatile unit. Beside that is the projector IDC25. This is a DC to DC charger, and it controls power from the solar panels and also power from your vehicle via the alternator. Ensure it's always set to AGM for this type of batteries, and it will indicate where it's taking power from and if it's charging. The solid light means it's charging off the solar panels now because the solar light is on. When charging from the vehicle, the alternator light will show up. To the right of all that is the 1000 watt projector inverter. So that will supply off-grid 240 volt power up to 1000 watts constant use. So don't overdo it. Make sure you know the wattage input in the appliance you're plugging it into and make sure it doesn't exceed 1000 watts. Behind that is a large circuit breaker. It's got a black body, red button and a little red toggle on the side here. When it trips, the little lever pops out the side and that will indicate that that's where the power loss is coming from. To reset it, you simply push the little lever back in. With the inverter, it's okay to leave that off until you need to run your inverter to power an appliance. To the other side of the IDC25, there's a number of circuit breakers with a red rubber cap over them, and just next to those are two individual blade fuse holders. It's important to know what these blade fuses are for. One will be a standalone fuse to the radio and the other is a standalone fuse for the breakaway system. The radio fuse will be a small value, 1 to 5 amp, and the one for a single axle breakaway system such as the XT10E will be a 15 amp blade fuse. So it's a good idea to carry spares of those with you. The circuit breakers with the red rubber caps over the top of them are, two of them will be for the solar panels that run between the solar panels and the IDC25. Each panel is individually fused with those. If they trip, there is a small black button that pops out the end of the breaker, which to reset needs to be pushed back in. The other breakers are one that goes from the IDC25 to the batteries and another that goes from the projector charger to the batteries, and there'll also be one from the Anderson plug to the IDC25. So if you have a failure between any of those points, these are the breakers that you come looking at to make sure that they haven't tripped, and if they have, reset them. Just on the other wall here is another black bodied circuit breaker with a red button and a red lever. This is the main breaker from the battery supply to the 12 volt systems in the Caravan. So if you're not getting power at the panel, the switch panel, this is the breaker that will be the culprit, and you can reset that again by pushing the little red lever in. So that's all the main electronics. The projector charger is plugged into a typical wall socket, a double pole socket, which is powered from the 240 volt inlet into the Caravan. So you need mains power for this to work. All the power points in your Caravan are supplied by mains power only. The other items you need to know about in your electrical system are the location of the switches. Just down on the left hand side inside the door are the switches for your exterior lights, your light handles and your floor light. Beside that is your roof raising and lowering switch, and again beside that is the switch for the awning. Just above is your stereo. Here's a tip for the stereo. If you want to change the speakers from outside to inside, use the fader function on the radio. Just up on the inside right hand side of the door is the main switch for the roof lights, and just up here above on the left hand side of the door is the RCD switch. That is your 240 volt protection in case of a fault. Now that should be in, the switch should be in the up position for it to be on. If it trips out, you'll see the switch will be in the down position. That's where you reset power if you have an interruption to the 240 volt system. The other part of the electrics package you need to understand is the control panel in here. So what I'll do is I'll run through the various items and functions of everything on this panel. Starting with the components, this is the main isolator switch for the 12 volt system. When this is turned to the on position, all the 12 volt systems are active. When switched off, all the resources are switched off, but the Caravan will still charge from solar panels, from the alternator in your vehicle, and from the 240 volt power input. So everything will charge as per normal when this is switched off. When you're traveling, if you're running a fridge, you need to have this main switch turned on and the fridge switch here switched on to make sure that there is power to the power point or the 12 volt power source in the fridge slide to run your fridge. The switches along the bottom here are to turn each system on and off. Hot water system, so it will use the electric ignition, that must be on when you're using the hot water. The switch for the diesel heater, the water pump, DC outlets, and again the refrigerator. Just above is the voltage readout, so that'll tell you basically the battery condition according to this chart here on the door. The amp gauge will tell you how many amps the system is using at any time. It won't tell you what amp input is coming from the charger or from the solar. It will only give you an accurate reading for the amps being drawn from the battery at any time. Above that is the remote panel for the projector IntelliCharge charger. You can control all the settings and read battery voltage from there. Beside that is the water gauge for the water tank, and below are the various individual circuit breakers for each of these systems. So if, say, your diesel heater switches off, there's no 12 volt power for it, you would come to this circuit breaker marked diesel heater and press it in to reset the breaker. So all your individual circuits there. Your XT10E is fitted with a diesel heater. So now I'll run you through using the control panel for the diesel heater. Remember, the first thing you need to do is check that you actually have diesel in the tank in the front storage locker, and switch on the circuit switch for the diesel heater on your control panel. Then you can fire the unit up. To use the diesel heater in heating mode, once it's switched on at the main panel, it's simply a matter of pushing this button here with the wavy lines. Press it once and the diesel heater will go through its startup cycle and eventually start blowing warm air from the outlet here. To turn it off, simply press that button once again and it'll go through its cool down cycle and then switch it off. Whatever you do, don't interrupt the startup or the cool down cycles by turning off power at the board. Always let it run through it to completion. To use it as a fan only, you simply press the fan button at the bottom once only. Then it'll switch on. You don't have to hold either of those buttons in. So you just press them once and it'll kick off. To then turn the fan system off, press the button once again. Ignore the center button. That is simply a function that works when the remote LCD panel is installed with the unit. When it runs, if the diesel heater faults at all, you will see a series of flashes from the red light. Take note of the flashes and consult the MDC owner manual to see what the fault is telling you. But again, I can't tell you how important it is to let the diesel heater go through its full warm-up initiative cycle and its full cool down cycle before you switch it off. The fan outlet here, always keep it pointed in a direction that doesn't go direct onto any surfaces. The air can be quite hot and you can damage finished surfaces by having too much hot air on them. So keep it pointed in an upward position or into the center of the van. Don't turn it so it's blowing hot air directly onto laminates, because you can actually damage the laminates. So that is certainly the best position to have it in. Before using your Truma gas hot water system, you need to remove the flue covers over here. First of all, undo the main protective one. This doubles as mechanical protection as well as dust protection for the Truma flue underneath. To release this, you want to press your thumbs in the center and pull the top back with your fingers. And that'll come away. The flue's now ready to use. Once you've removed both flue covers from the outside of the Caravan and switched on the hot water system at the control panel, you can come to this small panel here and switch the hot water system on. The grey switch in the middle here is a 3-position switch. The middle position is the off position. If you depress the top of the switch, that will switch the unit on at a thermostat temperature of 60 degrees. If you choose to switch the bottom on, that will choose a thermostat temperature of 70 degrees. When you switch the unit on, it'll go through a starting clicking system to ignite the burners. If for any reason the burners do not light, a red light will come on the panel signifying that it has failed to light. Switch it off if that happens, give it a few moments and then switch the system back on. Sometimes when you've changed a gas bottle or the system is new and there is air in the lines, it may take a number of attempts to get the system to light. Don't panic. Sometimes it'll take maybe 10 goes to get it to light, purely because it has to purge the air out of the gas lines before the system can start up. Make sure you have a read of the Truma manual and get yourself familiar with the correct operation and maintenance of the unit, as there is 6 monthly and 12 monthly annual maintenance to descale the unit and get rid of any lime scale inside it. Something else that will come with all the goodies in your new caravan or camper is this sample tin of Lanatec. It's a 60-gram sample pack and it is a great little product. I've been advocating it for years. It is a protectant against corrosion and a lubricant. Some of the things that you would use this for, particularly on your pop top, would be on the springs and sliding mechanisms on your canopy lifting system. This will make sure it runs smooth. It'll get rid of squeaks. It's great for squeaking doors. Also, it's a terrific protectant for zinc high tensile bolts. Generally, high tensile bolts won't be galvanized. They'll be zinc coated, so they're not as resistant to corrosion as the hot dip galvanized chassis. This is the perfect thing for making sure those things don't rust. If you're out on the tracks and you've got a whole heap of stone chips on your trailing arm suspension, until you get home, this is a great protectant. If you drive on the beach, you definitely should have at least one large can of this in your toolkit or in your garage at home. It is a fantastic protectant against corrosion from saltwater ingress. I even run this up the chassis of any trailer I own. I've used it for years on boat trailers and it was the best thing I could find to get rid of corrosion and keep it away. So inside the chassis holes, anything that could corrode, paint chips as a temporary protection, use this. To get rid of it, if you need to clean it off for a paint repair or something like that, use a wax and grease remover or a product called Brake Clean and that'll take it straight away, bit of prep salt, and then you can paint the chip paint or the paint damage with that. Also, it's a great coupling lubricant, so also put it on the threads of your hitch fitting. It'll stop those from corroding and binding up. It is just a great thing. So it'll be in your new MDC camper or caravan. Make sure you use it and get the most out of it. So there you go, folks. That's all the extra information you need that's not covered in the setup videos. And remember to download a copy of the owner manual so you've got a reference to keep inside your caravan.